Hello and welcome to GREENFLEET Talks. My name is Kate Armitage and I'm your host for our discussion today. And I'm delighted to be joined by Simon Tate, Sales Director at Mer.
Hi Kate, how are you doing?
Hi Simon, I'm very well. It's very good to speak to you again.
You as well, really nice to see you.
Simon, today we're going to be discussing the transition to electric. You are very well known in the industry for providing fleet charging solutions for electric vehicles. But I was wondering if you could just give us a very brief introduction to Mer.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Mer's not very well known in the industry. You may know me from Elmtronics. Yeah, so Elmtronics were recently acquired by Mer, which is part of the Statkraft family. So Statkraft is Norway's largest producer of renewable energy, being solar, wind, and hydroelectricity. Statkraft are very well known in that space. So if you are in the world of renewable energy in that utility space, Statkraft are a major player. And Mer is their EV charging brand. So Mer are very well established in the Nordics. They're the largest public network in Norway and in Sweden, and also they're deeply rooted in Germany as well. And Mer has actually existed in the UK, be it on a relatively small scale in the public domain. So you'll see a lot of our Mer public charging predominantly in the south. And the acquisition of Mer, of Elmtronics at the beginning of this year has really allowed Mer to really kick into the fleet and workplace arena, really, which is where we've been as Elmtronics since 2014, really. So the kind of Mer is very much really driving the agenda towards fleet, predominantly in workplace and home charging, and obviously in the public domain, and really growing in the UK is certainly a direction that Mer want to grow. But we've got great backing. Obviously, we've got a great story with the renewable energy piece as well, tied in with all of the expertise and that we have internally in the business, and we've been doing this for a period of time now. So we're well established, well versed. We've gone through all of the trials and tribulations of EV. But yeah, hopefully is a nice warm introduction into what we do and operating throughout the UK.
Sounds like a winning combination, Simon, in terms of getting the maturity of the Scandinavian EV markets, and then also the expertise in Germany and in the UK. So
yeah, I think it's a good point as well. Norway. I've been over there. I've had the opportunity to go over there and to really see what those guys are doing. You generally, if you haven't had the opportunity, obviously we've had COVID, you kind of haven't been able to, but you hear a lot of stuff that Norway are doing. And when you do actually go there, you actually see it live. Yeah. You do see every other car is pretty much electric, and you do see charging points everywhere. That's kind of something that I look for anyway. But, they are very much ahead, and there's a lot for us to learn. And that's certainly really great for us in the UK to take that expertise. So all positive.
They're certainly doing things at scale. I've got a couple of interesting topics to discuss with you, Simon. I think I'm going to kick off with something that has been a challenge for the last 12 months and is continuing, which is the supply of electric vehicles coming into the market. We're seeing these long waiting times occurring, and as a knock-on effect, fleets are having to keep hold of their existing vehicles for longer. And what problems does that raise, and how do you see that issue resolving itself?
And it's a great question, Kate. And there's a million and one different answers for it. I think it's probably best to pick out a few ones that I see. So, my background is fleet. So, is in working in the leasing environment. So I know only too well how vehicles are so important to businesses, and I know how important it is for companies who are wanting to transition over into electric. Not all, by the way. Some people are quite happy to stay and run with diesel. I'm not going to say that the whole world's going to change just like that. But if you people who are wanting to change and they are wanting to move over to EV and they're having to wait on these ridiculous lead times caused by semiconductor issues, you know, a lot of factors that are affecting that. So from a car point of view, as a car driver, and I'm putting myself as a car driver, if I have to stay in my 320D diesel for longer periods, that's affecting me in my back pocket. So I'm getting hit with benefit in kind. So that's not great. The CO2 levels aren't great. So it's affecting me in my back pocket. And then also from a morale point of view, you know, I'm in a vehicle longer than I want it to be. I normally change every 3 years. So I'm having to stay in it for 3, maybe 4 or even 5 years, which isn't great. So from a morale point of view, I think that affects the drivers, but obviously it affects the employers as well, because they're making the vehicle stay. And then obviously from a business point of view, the running costs, you know, vehicles that go over 36 months old or they go over their warranty, you then really start incurring costs, higher mileage, you know, fan belts need to be changed, etc. It affects gearboxes, you know, tires all getting replaced. So the key areas is, one is the massive effect on the drivers, I'd say, morale point of view, and the effect on the back pocket, which we're all feeling, let's be honest. Everybody's feeling the pinch. So there's that. And then I think from a business point of view, it's the running costs. And then equally, again, when we're looking at commercial vehicles as well, it's the same kind of factors, not so much the benefit in kind, but the total cost of ownership. And then making sure that the vehicles are safe and they're roadworthy. That's, you know, Ken, the more miles that you're putting on vehicles does have an effect on its roadworthiness and its safety, etc. You know, so there's a number of different factors at play. I could go on and on and on about it, but in short, I think cars are affected, vans are affected. But I think what's good though is there's like a real keenness, especially in cars anyway, to actually move and transition over to EV. But there's so many different like stopping and starting, can get vehicles but can't get vehicles. There's lockdowns in China, and it's a real challenge for the drivers, the leasing cores, and everybody really.
In one respect, you know, how nice to see that demand for EVs is so high that the industry is struggling to keep up. Although we do realise there are other issues behind it. And as you've said, none of this was planned. You know, when those diesel vehicles were purchased 3 or 4 years ago, it was never expected that they were going to stay on the books for longer. So it does create quite a lot of ripple effects. Now, so we've talked about the vehicles, but are there similar lags on the availability of charge points? So I'm
nodding my head. Yes.
Okay, so how can we do those two things marry up? Actually, is this a good thing?
I think it's good, but I mean, the supply chain in every industry is affected. I mean, so, you know, when you're putting electric charging hardware together, there's multiple components in those chargers, a lot of switches, a lot of switch gear, again, which is sourced from all over the world and then assembled centrally in the likes of Europe. The other key thing is there's not many chargers assembled or manufactured in the UK, which is a bit of a bone of contention for me, to be perfectly honest. I think we are so keen to move to EV, yet manufacturing of this equipment is not done in the UK en masse, on scale. I still think we're kind of knocking out chargers out of the back of a shed to some degree, but you know, the major players and the best charging equipment isn't manufactured here in the UK. It's manufactured in Italy or Spain or in Holland, which is fine. However, the lead times again are affected, and the demands, not just in the UK for charging infrastructure, it's across Europe and obviously across the world, North America, you know, Australia. There's demand everywhere really, because everyone needs to hit their target. So I think they can't build chargers quick enough, if I'm honest. And certainly the chargers that we go for tend to be manufactured here in Europe by the major players that are of high quality, not from chargers from further afield where we can't get parts so we can't get the support. So yeah, there is a major demand for especially DC rapid charging. That's evident. AC is okay, but we've kind of come through the storm with our suppliers with regards to fast chargers, AC charging. But DC is, you know, you're talking 6 months.
Right. Okay. So
I mean,
this is interesting, isn't it? Because actually, if overnight the delays for vehicles were solved, then you'd have a lot of fleets getting cars and no ability to charge them. So it's definitely something that needs to be.
It's happening now. Right. It's happening now. I mean, I read, be it very skim reading on LinkedIn, and it was an article in the press that Amazon have adopted electric vehicles, but they've got a number of vehicles that are static and can't move because of delays with infrastructure.
Okay.
And I think that could be for many number of reasons. It could be down to the hardware, but it could also be down to the bringing in the power into that
waiting for
location.
the DNO upgrade. Yeah. So the key message is getting the infrastructure in place is not an overnight job. So utilize this breathing space that you have to really get ahead of the game in the terms of the charging infrastructure.
Correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Now, Simon, so a lot of the work that you do, most of the work that you do is fleet solutions for workplace, depots, home. But can we just talk about the public charging network? So range anxiety used to be the buzzword, but I think as the batteries have got bigger, range has gone up. The focus now is on the reliability and convenience of the public charging network. You know, what do you think are the main problems, and how are they going to be solved?
Oh, where do you want me to start? Right, so I drive an electric car, thankfully, yeah, as you would expect me to, and I drive a lot of miles. I do about 30,000 miles a year with an electric car. So I'd like to say that I'm pretty averse with public charging.
Yep. And a great case study, because a lot of fleets wouldn't consider putting an employee in an EV.
No, they wouldn't.
They were doing 30,000 miles.
I think I'd be last on the list. But no, I have to be in an EV, and I live and breathe it, and I do lots of miles, and I'll drive from city to city, and I'll drive from one end of the country to another. So I use public charging more than I use probably home charging or workplace charging. So I'd like to think I can kind of give you an honest vibe.
Okay.
What I will say is the last 12 months, I think we've made some massive leap forward. I think there's a real, let's talk about the positives first. We have made some huge leap forwards. I think you're seeing great infrastructure popping up in key locations. The biggest welcome I've seen probably in the last 12 months is the upgrade of the motorway network. Yeah, so
finally,
yeah, we know who they are, and they've done a stellar job. Yeah, because they've moved them from very dated infrastructure that was probably put in 2010. And it was 2011 off the back of the Nissan Leaf. That infrastructure is now gone. So there's new shiny infrastructure that works, payment solutions, happy days, great. Then you've got other EV charging companies who are putting in infrastructure in key locations, and that's great to see. However, it isn't all plain sailing, because you can arrive at a charging station, and because there's limited numbers of stations there at those particular locations, you see it, you are queuing to get on those stations at certain points and at peak times. So that, that throws its challenges and frustrations to drivers. Throw into the mix the technology side, not necessarily the hardware, but like the technology side and how things are connected to apps and they're connected to the cloud, and technology can be temperamental. So you can arrive at a charging station and it just doesn't work. You get there, there's no one there, and you think, great. You go through the processes of downloading the app, it doesn't work. When you're trying to ring a call center and they can help you to a point, there's lots of different kind of nuances to it. Or the infrastructure's old. and it's, you know, beyond repair, and it needs replacing and updating, or it can't charge your particular vehicle because it hasn't got the correct firmware. So in some points it's really great, and I absolutely applaud what we're doing, but then in other areas the older infrastructure is, you know, is not being serviced and maintained as much as it should be. And really, we have a massive responsibility in this space in EV charging to look after our customers. It's like, it's basics. You know, you don't arrive at a fuel station and the fuel pump doesn't work. It works. And for orders to do mass adoption in the EV space, we need to be giving our customers absolutely consistent, where as much as possible. You know, 99% of the time it's going to fail sometimes, but we need to be consistently looking after drivers, because there's frustration all the time, Kate. I see it. I actually help people when I'm at a charging station and they're having an issue with the app, or they don't get taught by the car manufacturer when it's been handed over to them, or the hire or rental company, how to actually use the electric car. The essence, throw in the keys, away you go, and they don't know how to do it. So there's responsibility on the driver as well, by the way, to actually learn and investigate. It's like me being a typical bloke. You get a brand new shiny bit of hardware and you don't read the manual. But I think if you actually are a driver, do you know what I mean?
Oh,
you know, you just hit that, that'll work. Stick it in, start, and away you go. You don't actually do your research on it. So there's a bit of joint responsibility of the drivers, but I think the infrastructure and networks really need to up their game consistently, I think. Personally.
There is. I would counter your point, Simon, by saying if you need to have read a manual, then that probably isn't fit for public infrastructure. It should be intuitive. It should be very clear. I am guilty of not always even reading the instructions on the charge point, and therefore not following the correct sequence and falling over. For me, plug and charge cannot come too soon. That's,
tell me about it.
You know, that would make such a huge difference, that actually that whole human interface element is limited to plug your car in, and then the car and the charge point do everything between.
And it's coming, Kate.
It is coming.
It is coming. It is coming. I've literally got off a call this morning with one of our hardware manufacturers. I'll not say who that is, but they are ready to launch the new plug and charge protocol on their AC chargers, which is amazing.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
We should see that coming to the market to order this year, for it to be in the ground in Q1, which we are extremely excited about. So we'll certainly be shouting from the rooftops about that, but it can't come soon enough.
It can't. And then you just need to have the right car, because it's only available on certain cars at the moment.
At the moment, can't wait.
That would be great. So just rewinding the conversation back a little bit, and we haven't got much time. Very quickly, for fleets, I have to ask this because there are still fleets out there who have not begun their transition to zero emission. We're talking about electric today, but they haven't begun that transition.
There's loads.
What advice, you know, what if you say if you only do one thing in 2022, this is what you need to do?
Well, I'll say that if there's two things that they need to do, I'll throw an extra one in, because I think it's really important. So there's two things I'd say. One is get up off your backside, get out the office, go and see things for yourself. You know, get out the office and go and look at charging infrastructure. Don't just look at it in a glossy brochure, stuff like that. Go and actually see it live in operation. Go and speak to kind of similar organizations to yourself and collaborate and learn from others who have made that step, because I can tell you that they've made real positive steps, but they'll have probably made a huge amount of mistakes as well, and they've learned along the way. So go and speak to people who are doing it, get out the office and ask the questions, and ask. That would be really important, and touch the hardware and make sure that it's fit for purpose, because if you're in fleet, you need the chargers to work and to last, because if you've got poor quality chargers, you'll be facing more problems than you could care to imagine, and your downtime will just be ridiculous. So you've got to really be serious and learn from other people's mistakes and get out there. So get out the office, go and see people. The other one would be is understand what power you have or you don't have available. So looking at like the maximum demand, your peaks now, and then what capacity you have, because we're not putting in one charge point in the ground now, we're putting in multiples, and the draw and the demand coming, especially coming from a building, could make or break actually your kind of your budget and actually your strategy and what you do. So it's looking at the site and the power that's available, because then that'll dictate what type of infrastructure you can or you can't have. And then also getting the grips of you cannot bring in the power is get your head around DNOs and what that looks like. So you will have to bring in more power into or dedicated power into your premises or your sites, be it which sites you need to do. So, you know, it would be very much looking at the power that you've got, sussing out the DNOs and what they can do. But then I would say, if I can just sneak the final one, is get in experts who are trusted. And that, I know I'm going to make a play for it. It would be someone like ourselves who come in and just do a survey of your site. It's free, but it's a detailed one that gives you some comfort, and the people who are asking you the right questions and giving you the right solution, not just yeah, that'll do, stick one charger in and away you go. You've got to make sure you're working with someone who can look after you. And there's lots of EV charging companies out there, but they've got to be in it to help and support you in the long run, not necessarily just for the short term. So
Simon, I think that is fabulous advice, because it's not, your comfort zone is knowing about the vehicles and what your vehicle needs are. But you do also need to know what the power availability is on your site. So you've got to understand all aspects of the problem. There's no point in worrying about something until you know that whether or not you have a problem. Actually, you know, this DNA process takes quite a while again. So utilizing this kind of time when you're waiting for the vehicles to do that, but also the DNOs need to know this. The sooner you say, I'm a fleet and I'm going to be switching to electric, the better the picture the DNOs have of where they need the power to go. So, you know, it's a great conversation to have. And with the help of experts like yourselves, I think that process needn't be painful. So I'm at one last question, very quickly. We haven't seen the same progress in vans in terms of new vehicle registrations that we've seen in cars. So in July, it was reported that only 5% of new vans registered were electric and still 93% diesel, which is a little bit disappointing. What are the particular challenges with vans, and when can we expect to see these numbers improving?
Well, I think it's a good question, and there's like most of them, there's lots of different answers that you can give. I think the payload issue is never going to go away. You know, a commercial vehicle as an operating vehicle, it carries stuff around. Some be it very light, some be very heavy. I think where the very heavy element comes into it, you know, at this moment in time, if they're doing you're doing big drives and multiple sites, or they're taking the vehicles home, all those sorts of stuff, you know, that we're not there yet, just yet. I think if you're carrying lighter stuff and you're in a defined geography, then, you know, you've got to look at switching. But if I might be speaking out of turn here, but cars are more motive and individuals are a lot more accepting to switch. But I always think when I engage with commercial fleets, they look more for the negatives than they do the positives. They look to try and not do it, and I think it's a mindset change. It's like look for the positives and look for the early wins, as opposed to trying to address the whole picture all in one go. It's just not going to work. Just ain't. Commercial vehicles are going to be probably the latter ones to adopt to electric. That's like a given. There is some great vehicles out there. You know, I think Maxis, if I'm honest, have pretty much got a vehicle to fit every single
they have
range, and well done.
Coming.
Great, happy days. But you know, Ford, up your game. Mercedes, up your game. Volkswagen, up your game. Because the demand is there, but the necessary right vehicles and the right brands aren't coming to the party. But then I think also the cost of these things as well, they're far more expensive than a typical diesel at this moment in time. So I think when you're looking at the total cost of ownership, when the fleet is making that decision at this moment in time, I think there's another few cycles of change, at least one more cycle of change for commercial vehicles. I think
before we reach parity on the TCO.
Potentially, yeah. But I think there's, like leasing companies or rental companies are there. They've got fleets of electric vehicles that they can hire on a short or medium term basis. So instead of going in 2-footed, put 1 foot in and work with some of the kind of the rental companies that have got these kind of offerings, because they're tailor made to help you, because then you're not fully committed. But I think I personally think it's a mindset change in it. And I do get frustrated when I talk to commercial fleet operators, because they generally look for all of the negatives first. And I might be speaking out of turn here, just saying it how I see it.
I don't think you are speaking out of turn. I think it's a perception of risk, and there's no unless as the fleet manager you have targets around reducing emissions, then what's the incentive to take that risk?
Yeah. There's loads of challenges with commercials and drivers taking their vehicles home, and they're not being in the business for very long, and it's how would you give them a home charger? But there is solutions out there. You just need to talk. Don't listen to your mate in the pub. Speak to an expert.
Yeah. Well, home and on-street charging is we'll save that for our next GreenFleet Talks, Simon, which I hope will be soon. It has been a pleasure talking to you, as always. And I would like to thank Murph for joining GreenFleet Talks. And I'd like to thank our audience for watching. Please tune in to GreenFleet 365 again soon.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Simon.
Stay safe. Take care. Bye.